The management of this theater thanks you for your patronage.
The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerf Herder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
So how was the run across the border?
Well, I think we're going to get into that because that's part of our experience.
Yeah.
It was interesting. We were like bootleggers, man.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't the only ones, though. I'll tell you that.
We were not.
Am I too loud?
Are we in already?
I don't know. Do we want to just get right into this? Do we want to talk about the news? I really had little, but we have to at least acknowledge what happened. Because I think we all went to bed Friday night or woke up Saturday morning with some very sad news.
Yes.
Chadwick Boseman.
Mm-hmm.
It's a blow, man. I was young. Listen, I'm like 10 years older than it.
Unexpected. I thought it was a hoax.
This spread like wildfire, and it is sad.
When we watched The Five Bloods, I thought he looked very thin. Maybe part of the character or...
Right, and you also think that when these superhero movies, they do bulk up.
Yeah, and for actors, you change into a different person every time.
Really unfortunate now in retrospect to realize that he was just so ill.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing that he was out here for 4 years making movies, doing press junkets, not telling anybody what he was going through.
Think you'd want that to get out, right? Like, I don't know. Me personally, I don't want that level of sympathy. I don't want people to suddenly treat me differently.
Yeah.
For somebody in his position, maybe the responsibility of being a role model kind of figured into it as well. This role is cast upon him, and he held it so well.
Oh, absolutely.
With such dignity.
And you just look at the footage, he was going to he was going to cancer wards, and he's there for little kids. So, as well as he's like the superhero, he's looking at these kids going, I know what you're going through. Yeah, it's very sad.
Huge loss, for movies, for everything. Yeah.
You look at the Black Panther, that was like the number one superhero movie in the last ever. I mean, it broke all box office records. So you're right, Jim. He held this heavy weight just dropped on this guy's shoulders, and he ran with it.
But imagine us watching Five Bloods after the news. It would I wouldn't be able to get through it.
No, because then now you're hyper aware of it. But
it's kind of like watching Stand By Me and the scene where River Phoenix disappears, which takes on a whole new meaning.
Yeah.
I have a lot of trouble actually watching anything with River Phoenix now. Now, I hate that I'm now going to look at Chadwick Boseman and say in his short life, because 43 is short, he's done all these incredible things, but think about what he could have done with another 10 years, with another 20 years, with another 30 years.
Right. And I guess we can say to listeners out there, the average age for somebody to get screened for a colonoscopy was 50. Mm-hmm. And we should be reconsidering that. I'm not a medical professional by any means.
No. Listen, and I'm a guy who's pushing 10 years plus, and I've been reluctant, but I do have an appointment set up 2 weeks. Go get screened, kids.
Yeah. These screenings for anything are not fun.
No.
But please go and get them. Please take care of yourselves.
Yeah, that's a bummer way to kind of start this episode, because I think that we're all coming in with this giddy that we have returned to the theater. And I know, Christina's been dangling it in front of us for weeks that you've had opening Well, listen. I'm not saying that you're being a jerk about it, but
it's two different things. As we were talking about last week, this is like big box movie viewing, going to an AMC or a Regal. As Christina is saying, the audience that is going to the music box, perhaps this might be unfair to say, but they are probably more apt to follow the rules than the general public.
I will say, and we'll get into the entire experience because Jim and I did meet face to face. And we experienced the movie together. Well, kind of together. We were seats apart. Everyone that I was in proximity or was able to see kept their masks on. Although you do become hyper aware of the douchebag 2 seats over from me that's tossing popcorn into his eye hole. And I found myself like kind of leaning away. But 10 minutes into the movie, let's start from square one. We meet in the parking lot, right?
Yes. And we meet probably, I got there like 45 minutes before the movie was due to start, and Jeff was already there.
My car was the only car in the parking lot.
And it was deserted. You would think that the AMC had been closed for months and was not reopening.
Yeah, there was tumbleweeds. Home Depot and Lowe's across the street were jammed with cars, and yet the movie theater parking lot was just a wasteland.
But as the start time got closer, a few more cars pulled in. We noticed this was in Connecticut because New York theaters aren't open yet. There was a New Jersey car. There were several New York license plates in the parking lot.
So we weren't the only ones that were jumping the border. But it's funny because, I mean, I see Jim every week. We text all week long, and then we do this together. But to me, you're like Max Headroom. You know, you're just a big face on the screen. And to see you again, like your social skills go out the window, because the minute the guy and his wife get out of the car, I want to hug him. I want to say, "Hey, Jim, it's good to see you."
I know.
It's like, do I fist bump you? Do I, give you an elbow and then we wash hands? What do we do? And so it's just very socially awkward.
Walking into the theater was kind of foreboding. It wasn't the relief that I was thinking it was going to be. I'm like, what is this going to hold?
No, again, I've been out every day. I interact with people, and there's a certain level of comfort that I've become accustomed to. But driving to this theater, all I'm thinking of is like, I just stopped at Popeyes and got a spicy chicken sandwich. What if my temperature spikes and now they won't let me in? I went up 2 degrees.
Well, we didn't have to worry about it because they were not doing.
They were not testing temperatures. No. But I will say, that's a big ass theater. So the minute you walk in, everything, the water fountains are all closed off. The guy scans your ticket, which is on your phone anyway, so that it's completely contactless. There were people that were going up to concessions, but you could have ordered them in advance. Hand sanitizers and wipes like every 10 feet. So, and it was a 312 capacity theater, and we walked out counting 37 people. So, but you are aware, because there when the movie started, there were 17 people, and then half of them came in late. And I'm like, you haven't been to a theater in 6 months, and now you're coming in late.
And of course, they can't see.
Right, so they're using their phone.
So all you see is the outline of some head in front of you, like that's standing in front of the screen as they're looking at their phone and trying to figure out where their seats are.
What their seat number is, yeah.
And as Jeff pointed out, it's been how many months since you've been to a theater? Get there on time. You've had 6 months to prepare for this.
But beyond that, I felt very safe. I felt very comfortable. There was that 10-minute apprehension.
And then you're hyper aware of everybody that coughs.
No, now all of a sudden it just takes on epic proportions.
I didn't see who was next to you, Jeff, because we were in different aisles. I didn't see who was next to you that was shoveling in the popcorn. But when I heard that cough, I had a vision in my head, and perhaps that's what this guy looked like. Maybe of a guy with a shaved head whose neck was actually thicker than his head, who coughed, and in the matrix spiraling around him in slow motion, popcorn particles and germs.
Wow, so you already had like a preconceived notion of what...
It's funny that you say that, because when we went to see Peninsula last week, Chris did get like some popcorn caught in the back of his
no.
during the movie. He started coughing. He immediately put the napkin over his face, but I could tell that he felt terrible about.
Yes, I mean, we all cough, you all sneeze.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, the amount of times that my eyebrows raised every time somebody approached me looking for their seat, I'm like, keep going.
Don't you sit next to me. Because then you're like, wait, am I in the right seat? Did I sit one over?
Yeah.
Can I move?
In terms of that, I always know that I'm right, and they are wrong in every occasion.
You just need that Bugs Bunny. Excuse me, pardon me, coming through. Excuse me, pardon me, coming through. Touching everybody. But I will say, I mean, I personally was happy with the experience. I would go back.
Yes, in the end, yes.
Yeah, but we did notice when we came out of the theater at around 5 o'clock, the parking lot was jammed.
That's really interesting because, as you know, like we've been able to have theaters open here for about 5 weeks, but the bigger chains and stuff, they haven't opened because there's been no new movies.
Right.
You know, they all opened last week. So we went to see New Mutants 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, and normally that theater would be jumping. Like there'd be literally hundreds of people in there. It's a recliner theater, so there's less seats, but there's about, I actually counted them because I was curious, 96 seats in the theater. So, 16 across, and then, so many rows. There were 10 people in our theater on a Saturday afternoon, and there were a few people kind of wandering around going to other things because they're showing Jaws and Jurassic Park and a bunch of other stuff as well, but there really were not many people at the theater. Now, part of that could be a distribution thing in that I live in a big city with a lot of movie theaters, and since not that many people are going back to the movies yet, maybe it's just that there weren't that many people at the theater because they're all going to different theaters.
Right.
But I'm very, very curious to see how these numbers change when Tenet comes out, because Tenet is a such much higher profile film, and you guys were talking about all the cars from different states with the different license plates, and I sent you the article the other day from Variety.
Well, that's what I wanted to get into, which is interesting.
Talking about people flying from
jumping on a plane to go see this movie. That's
the kind of movie that really brings out sort of like hardcore fans. I'm curious to see how the crowd levels change when that movie comes
well,
out.
contrast that with the other article which we came across, which was this official movie site review. Their whole article was why they're not going back to the theater to review New Mutants, and part of it had to do, they were pissed that the studio wasn't releasing screener copies. Suck it up with the rest of us.
Yeah, now they have to go with the public to see this movie.
I mean, listen, no one's paying us to do this, right? We don't have sponsors, but the reason we started this is because watching a movie is one thing, but the theater going experience adds that separate level. So to sit on your high horse and be like, well, I'm not going to go back with the commoners and watch this in the theater. If you're not going to screen it for me, I'm not going to review it. Well, guess what? Then people will come and listen to us instead. Yeah. I'm not going to rat the guy out, but it is interesting. You got people who are willing to jump on a plane and go to another country to watch a movie. And then there's other ones that are just like, it's not going to happen.
And he won't go down the street to his local to go watch it.
Right. What do you mean? I have to walk through the drive-thru to get your food? I don't think so.
That was the thing that was interesting to me, because the article was a little bit self-satisfied.
There was some snarkiness to it,
just with the sense of it's such a risk to go back to the theater and blah, blah, blah. I was very curious what else this guy is doing with his time. Is he going to brunch? Because if he is,
because like Jim wrote back, because we shared this via text, and Jim's like, wait, are we the mouth breathers? Like should I feel bad because I want to go back to the movie theater?
But again, you were saying, Jeff, and even at the Regal, I looked around, everyone was keeping their masks on, unless they were eating their popcorn or taking a sip of water.
Right.
People were keeping their masks on. I think overwhelmingly the sort of early adopters, are compliant.
Yeah. I mean, I did have a family of 4 who came in, and they sat, again, you get a 1-seat berth. And part of my issue was the fact that if I'm going back to the theater, I sat in a sweet spot. I'm dead center in the theater. Jim was smart enough that he had it out because he was right there on the aisle. So, the family came, and the kid was only one seat away from me, and he did have a face shield on, but as soon as he sat down, he took that shield off and he put a regular mask on. And it's as simple as that.
And I think if people will wear their masks and be compliant, and then everybody feels safe and more people will go back to the theater.
Yeah.
One thing I was very happy. I know that Jim doesn't like trailers, but I love trailers.
I was just going to get into the trailers.
We saw like 8 trailers.
All right.
Those new trailer from Morbius.
Yeah, that was now Jim, did you watch it?
Because I'm not fully invested yet in Morbius, because as soon as Jared Leto came up, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I was wondering if you put your fingers.
So I'm like, he's not worthy of me closing my eyes and shutting my ears.
It looks intriguing. It's got the same story structure as Doctor Strange in the sense that
similar.
That he's looking for a cure or whatever, and
close your ears if you don't want to hear any spoilers on Morbius. But at the very end of the trailer, you see who you assume is the Vulture, Michael Keaton.
Yeah, well, they are tying it. Well, you even see the one scene, and this was in the teaser trailer that was released quite a few months ago now. There's a quick little cutaway scene where he's walking in the alleyway, and there's a painting of Spider-Man with spray painted murderer over the front of it. So this does take place after Far From Home,
right? Which is a heck of a lot more than Venom attempted, because they made no reference.
But they did, from the studio that brought you Spider-Man and Venom, and you're like, oh. Those guys, okay.
So what else did you get? What else did you get besides Morbius?
The new Black Widow trailer.
What?
Yeah.
You did not get that. I definitely would have probably not watched.
I know that this is probably not on your guys' radar, but I'm a big Agatha Christie fan. We saw the trailer for the new Death on the Nile movie. It's not the same cast as Murder on the Orient Express, but it is a star-studded cast similar to Murder on the Orient Express. Because Death on the
Angela
Nile.
Lansbury, she's showing up?
No.
No?
We saw a lot of previews. We saw some stinkers. I saw a preview for this movie Greenland with...
No, hold on, yes, because that's the second one. That's the other one we saw.
I was going to say, didn't we see this already twice in one?
It's Gerard Butler, and basically asteroids, meteorites are raining down, and it's this end of the world, and I'm like, please make this Earth Has Fallen. Like, finish out that trilogy, right? Just finish out that whole entire movie franchise with the whole Earth just being destroyed.
First of all, as soon as you see Gerard Butler, I'm like, okay, I can check my phone for about. Because there's no way I'm gonna go see this movie.
But he plays the same. He plays the same character. I mean, outside of 300, he's basically the same character. But yeah, I really was like, is this really going to be called?
And talk about entitlement. Like, it's like their family, they deserve to be in this bunker. We are going to get to that bunker.
Oh, that's everybody. 2012 is the same way. 2012 is the same storyline, or it's blowing up. Let's all get
you're
to
running
those
over
arcs.
me to get to this bunker? No, I don't think so.
I'm military.
I'm not going to watch your movie.
I'm the star of this movie. But does that ruin the entire movie that we need to get to Greenland? Because that's the only safe spot? Like, why would you call that movie Greenland?
You know what it is? I have a lot... My suspension of disbelief will only go so far, and I'm like, the science behind this is so absurd. I cannot engage with the movie. But I don't like those movies.
I know, but those are turn off my brain and make me a big giant bowl of popcorn, and I can just veg out.
It's so funny because I can't turn off my brain because, like, that fact-checking part of my brain is going, this is not realistic.
Listen, I could tear every movie apart.
Well, meanwhile, like, for me, if they're playing a song that came out 2 months after the movie takes place, I can't get beyond that. Like, do your homework. Come on.
Yeah. So we've exhausted our movie-going experience. I think that.
But there was a third trailer, that horror movie.
I was going to say, what else did you guys?
About the kid that can only see the monster in his phone. And did you see the trailer for that?
Oh, man. What was I want to say cover story. That wasn't it. It was Come Play.
Come Play.
Come Play.
I did not see the preview for that.
I would actually review that.
You really? Because as that was playing, I'm like, Jeff is probably having a nervous breakdown.
I'm hiding underneath the guy eating his popcorn.
I'm telling you right now, Chandler, if you review a movie like that and we don't watch Candyman, I will destroy you.
I will watch Candyman before we cover Come Play. Jim's going to edit this out anyway, so no one will ever know that I agreed to this.
Just for that, I will not edit that out.
Not in writing.
Don't let it go, Jim.
Not the cutting room. So let's get into this because we saw New Mutants.
Let's talk about the surprise dropping of New Mutants. into August 28th. All of a sudden, Mulan, Tenet are the two
You're right.
tent poles that are jockeying for position as who's going to be the first, who's going to be the
Nope.
first. Neither of them are New Mutants, which has been delayed for years, for eons.
Yeah.
Suddenly, it's available for us to watch.
Yeah.
Now, this is very telling. You know,
Yeah.
could this mean that Disney's just throwing it out there? Okay, this is just something that was like a hanger-on from before our era. We're just going to throw it out there and see what happens.
Right. So that is probably, because that was 20th Century Fox, which may be the first 20th Century Studios logo used, because they changed it after Disney acquired it. And since this has been sitting on the shelf for 3 years, this may be the official first without the Fox. But regardless, it was filmed years ago.
Years ago.
All these kids have grandchildren now.
I know, and they couldn't do reshoots on it because the cast had aged
It changed so much. You can't just slap a wig on that.
No. Now, apparently, a lot of the reason for the delays were the studios and the director originally wanted to go in a more horror vein.
Right.
The studio got cold feet about that, and then especially more so when Disney took over. And then test audiences started coming back with positive reactions to the horror-themed trailers that they cut. And so then they said, okay, maybe they have something here.
Right, maybe we should rethink
Maybe we
this.
shouldn't meddle. Maybe they should go back to their original thoughts for this movie and make it a horror-driven thing, and which is what we've got here. It's not R-rated.
No, there's
Chandler fearing horror.
No, not at all. Is that this a thing now? Is that like an adjective?
It is for this show anyway. But it is more of like your young adult PG-13 kind of on the border. Oh, it's kind of scary. They give credit where credit is due. You see a little snippet of the episode Hush from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And the Smiley Men are complete ripoffs of the Gentlemen from Hush. And I think that they acknowledge that, which was nice to see.
Yeah. This was interesting because because first of all, we've waited so long to see this, so your expectations have built, and I hate to even bring this up, but it is getting absolutely destroyed on Rotten Tomatoes, and the number one comment is it's not worth the wait, regardless of the fact that it sat on shelves. It's not like, oh, we're gonna hold it back because it's so massive. It was circumstances.
They can't sequester the fact that this is, a 4-year-old movie or 3-year-old movie now. And in their head, they want to look for reasons why that it wasn't out.
Yeah, I don't
3
think
years
that
ago.
should come into play as far as reviewing it.
Some of the headlines I read this morning, just looking up stuff. Forbes, the headline, the worst X-Men movie ever.
That's no way.
Did they not see Dark Phoenix?
New York Times, maybe all the cool superpowers were taken. That's the headline of the review. People that obviously are not familiar with the characters, they think that they just dreamt them up out of the ether for this movie.
That's a huge issue, because if you have no connection to these characters, I can easily see you completely dismissing this.
Yes, because there's not much in the way of exposition. It helps 100% to be familiar with these characters, with the New Mutants, before going into it. I will say
the first 45 minutes, I was giddy, because I guess I'd never realized, the New Mutants came out in 1980, I think, the first issue, and they really were like baby X-Men. That was the next generation. Xavier was pulling together yet another group to groom to become X-Men. And it was written kind of kiddish. The animation style, or the illustration style, was very simple, very clean, very comic book. And then issue 18, when they bring in this guy who was pretty much an unknown, this illustrator named Bill Sienkiewicz, and his style I can only refer to as frenetic. I hate to even say that he's just a comic book artist, because he is an illustrator, and he completely changed the way comic books were looked at and illustrated. And he started with this storyline, this Spirit Bear. It was a 3-issue run where Danny was being terrorized by the Spirit Bear. And if you go back and you look at this artwork, it is unlike anything you have ever seen in a comic book. And I could not separate my emotions. Again, I never realized how connected I was to a lot of these characters, because I haven't read the New Mutants in years. And
True,
again, they were not the X-Men. They were actually referred to as X-Babies. There's a storyline where Kitty Pryde basically dropped out of the X-Men and she was forced into the New Mutants, and she wanted nothing to do with them because they were a bunch of stupid kids.
Yeah, I had the first 25 issues, and which I got off the shelf. That was the last time I was familiar with them, and it was like this was jarring so many memories.
Yeah, no, you were flooded, and that it taints my view of it, because I'm looking at Sam, and I'm looking at Cannibal, and I'm looking at Sunspot, and I'm looking at these characters, and I'm like, holy shit, they're on screen. I mean, and yeah, so. But if you had no connection to these characters, you're like, this is horrible.
Because they're not identified in their, like, Sunspot. It's
not
Sunspot.
So I don't
Bobby,
think, right?
So,
Ileana, there's one point where, she goes to, at the end of the movie, she goes to address the bear, and you can't do that. He's magic. And she just turns around, and I mouth the same thing. And she goes, so am I. Because that's her code name, Magic. And, they do mention Cannibal, but it's more like he's like a cannibal.
When she had that dragon, though, that was probably the kicker. Like
let's
brought
get into
the memories flooding.
Yes,
it was
questions.
Lockheed for me. I'm like, oh,
yes.
All of a sudden, all these images started coming at me. I'm like, wait a second, that wasn't her dragon. That was Kitty Pryde's dragon. And then I realized,
but you see, you're getting so again, and Christine is staring at us. So.
I'm just waiting.
I'm sorry. But yeah, because again, I'm assuming that your experience is completely different, because I'm going to have to just say that you are not familiar with the source material.
I mean, I know the book. I worked in a comic store for 4 years, but I was never a New Mutants reader. So
Gotcha.
My experience was different. But I'll tell you that I thought this movie was better than it had any right to be, given all of the recuts and the studio interference and all this stuff. Here's the thing. For me, the emphasis in this movie is on the characters, right? It's on their trauma.
Right.
It's on them talking. There's not a lot of action. There's not a lot of big CGI battles. I like that. I get sick of big CGI battles. I don't like a lot of the stuff that attracts other people to superhero movies, because I like characters.
Well, they're not superheroes.
Right.
They are, they just happen to be, if anyone doesn't realize, well, you know what? Let's just get into the story. So,
because Jeff, you had mentioned Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, and
which I think I don't think it went quite down that road.
The fact that this is a Marvel movie is secondary. If you're aware of the characters, then yes, you're connecting them with the comics, but it does work on another level if you just let yourself go with it and accept, okay, this guy does this, she does this, she's got a dragon. It can exist in its own reality, which I think is
by and large it does. They do mention the X-Men, so it exists in that world. They actually think they're being groomed to be X-Men, because they have no clue.
They use that little clip from Logan.
And as soon as that clip came up, I'm like, that's from another movie. But it wasn't until the end credits that I realized that it came from Logan. So let's go. Let's get into the movie itself.
Okay.
I was setting you up, Jim. I'm sorry.
Right.
I did not give you eye contact.
So we're introduced to the character of Danny, and she's on a reservation, and there's an explosion. There's things blowing up. Her father grabs her, and they run into the snow, into the woods. And you don't really know what's going on. You just
she doesn't know it, right? Because she wakes up, and he's just like, "We gotta run. We gotta run."
Brings her into the woods, and he sits her down. He's like, "You stay here," and he hears the screams, and he's like, "I got to go back to help." So he leaves her there by herself. And then she hears something coming in the woods, like a creature, and she hears trees moving, roaring, she hears footsteps and roaring, and then she starts to run, and then she's knocked out, and that's
after she sees her dad being thrown down, assuming.
True. Yes.
Dead.
She wakes up in a hospital, what appears to be a hospital. She's handcuffed to the bed. You actually see Maisie Williams' face looking at her through the vent, and that's a plot point a little bit later on. We're introduced to this doctor, Cecilia Reyes, and she's in a facility with these other kids, teenagers, that are mutants. And it's kind of a way station, because Reyes keeps talking about her superior. I want to make sure that you're not a danger to others or to yourselves, and then you can move on to the next facility from here. And then as the story kind of pulls back, you realize it's not just a hospital. They're on some kind of an abandoned site that has a chapel, various dilapidated buildings. So it seems like they're kind of forgotten about. But at the same time, Reyes is keeping a close eye on every single thing that they do. The kids, as Jeff mentioned, think, because it's never said said who her superior is, they think it's Xavier and that they're being groomed to be X-Men. But every time, and as an audience member, that's the only thing that you're fed. So you're thinking the same thing in the beginning, but every time that you see them on surveillance, it's very sinister. So you're thinking to yourself, this is not a good thing that they're trapped. And then as the story goes on, you realize that Reyes works for the Essex Corporation. They're being groomed into being killers for this corporation.
Right.
And they're scared of Danny because she's too dangerous, if there is such a thing, to these people.
Right. So when we first meet Danny and she's introduced to the other characters, you slowly start to find out why they're there. Reyes actually tells the story to Danny at one point, that a baby rattlesnake is more dangerous than an adult rattlesnake because it doesn't know how to control its venom. So she uses that as a metaphor that we have to find you new mutants as you come into puberty, because when your powers manifest, you don't know how to use them. You don't know how to harness them. And you're just going to cause danger, not only to yourself, but people around you. And so that's where you learn that Cannibal is, in the comics, he can combust and fly. He does fly, but that's the one thing I didn't like. Like, you don't see that signature look where his lower half is like imploding because he just, nickname is Cannibal.
It just looks like he looks like jet thrusters from the lower half.
Yeah,
right. From the illustrations.
But you find out that every one of these kids had a traumatic event when their powers manifested. He was a kid from Kentucky, and now the actor what was his name is
Charlie Heaton.
Charlie Heaton from Stranger Things. But he basically was coal mining in Kentucky with his dad, and he had an episode, caused a cave-in, and not only killed his dad, but half his crew. Rain Sinclair, who was played by Maisie Williams of Game of Thrones, Arya, in a really bad wig, but it holds true to how Rain looked in the comics. And she can transform into a dog. And like you said, the CG is very minimal until you get to the Spirit Bear fight in the end. But I love the fact that it was a real wolf. There is one scene where she transforms and you can tell it's CG. But other than that, it's... and then they use that sparingly. But you find out that she had an abusive priest and she killed him. So it does hold true to the comics. Even Sunspot, Roberto da Costa, who comes from a well-to-do family in Brazil, because he has the power to ignite, to turn into combust. I don't know, like, you did get his signature look where he's like that charcoal gray figure with just a glowing eyes, but he was like on fire and he can't control it. And basically, he tells a backstory that he caught his girlfriend on fire and killed her. So they all got these issues, but Danny doesn't know what her powers are. They only know that she's spiking at night and that she's got some kind of psionic activity.
And that everybody is having vivid hallucinations.
Yes. Yeah, their worst fears.
Like, as the movie goes on, the hallucinations become tangible. And then everybody realizes, although the audience does before everybody on screen, that it's Danny that's actually causing
what's
this.
New to this scenario? Yeah.
I think that was probably the one thing I really didn't like, was that I would have liked to have seen them lean in more to the spookiness of it and have it be sort of less obvious that it was coming from Danny.
Right.
That was one thing that I didn't like. I wished that they had sort of really embraced the potential scariness, especially like with Ileana's backstory in the film. I realize it's not exactly like the comics because my husband is a huge fan of the comics and already gave us a lecture about it.
Yeah, no, Magic is, outside of Nightcrawler, Magic is my all-time favorite character. But I don't think that they really could have done that justice, because I do know for a fact, and again, if anybody's familiar, and you see her last name is up on the screen, Reyes is watching. Her last name is Rasputin. She is Colossus's sister. Yes. And in the comics, she was like 2-3 years old and she gets abducted by Belasco and she grows up in limbo. And then she comes back with these powers and she has this, and they kind of played fast and loose with her powers, because there was a point where, she was screwing around with Danny and Danny went to go attack her and she blipped away just like Nightcrawler, but she's got like these stepping discs. But yet Reyes keeps putting her in solitary confinement and she doesn't leave.
And her character, that's, for somebody that's not familiar with the books, that's the most ambiguous character, because you don't really get a handle on what she can do. If you're coming into this completely blank slate, they don't really go out of their way to explain it either.
No, and I didn't like it. She is the bad guy in this for the longest time, and I didn't like that because I do love the character so much that they play her as the bitch. but it works. It works for the context of this movie because you got Danny coming in, and really Ileana kind of controls that group. Although in the comics, Sam is the Captain America. Sam is the one with the moral compass, and he is the one who's always kind of trying to do the right thing. And it's funny because I kept getting drawn back to that character of Sam, even though he's kind of quiet and off to the side. I thought he did a great job. And again, I'm jaded by just, the comic book aspect of it all.
Like Christina said, I liked it for what it was. Yeah. It could have been a little bit scarier if they focused more on the Smiley Man aspect. You got some sense that maybe this facility was haunted or something else.
Yeah.
But it was.
Yeah, no, it was glossed over. It's not glossed over, but it was made obvious that Danny, because they made such a big deal about the fact that she didn't know what her powers were, and they start the story and end the story with the fable that her dad tells her about the two bears. So you know that this is her fear. This is her biggest fear, this thing, and she's got to control it.
I just want to shout out, I love Adam Beach, the actor who plays her father. I was very sad that he was only in it for a few minutes. When I saw his face on screen, I was like, Adam Beach, I love you. And then he was gone.
What else was he in?
He's been in a ton of stuff. Probably you know him best from the movie Wind Talkers, if you ever saw that.
Oh, yes.
But,
With Nicolas Cage?
Yeah, but he's in... I already revealed a little bit of my mystery nerd cred earlier talking about Agatha Christie, but he's in a mystery series that was on PBS that was based on Tony Hillerman's books, and he plays Officer Jim Chi, and I just love him. He plays opposite Wes Studi, who's another one of my favorite actors. So I was very happy to see him, but then I was like, oh no, he's dead. He's gone.
Yeah. Well, what? He does come back in one little flashback, but talk to her from the beyond. But it's funny you mentioned her dad because there's only like 7 people in this movie. I had more people in my theater than that were in this movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is a nice thing because it adds to the claustrophobia. And
then just that sense they have of being isolated and stuff. There were a lot of elements of this movie that I really liked. And again, I was surprised by how well the movie hung together compared to something like Fantastic Four, where it was really obvious the studio had interfered and like made a completely different movie and than the director intended, and it ended up feeling like a big jumbled mess. Where this didn't feel like a big jumbled mess. This felt like it had a clear arc. There was a clear attempt to have an emotional arc for all the characters. And because the cast is small and because they're not distracted by a bunch of big fight scenes, they have time to do that. So I appreciated that. I actually appreciated the quietness of this movie.
It's very intimate. It really is an intimate movie. Mm-hmm. And I do see like the argument that this could have easily dropped on video on demand.
Yeah.
Because again, it's not a big CG spectacular.
I was reading something to the effect when Disney took over Fox, somebody signed a contract that guaranteed that New Mutants would get a theatrical release, which is why it was not dropped. They were
contractually obligated to
release it in theaters. Yes.
So all this time they're like, son of a bitch. Ileana sells this movie. Everything kind of rides on this character because she's so strong. I thought it was well cast. I really liked all of these characters, and a lot of it had to do with Maisie Williams being. I think that she is the heart.
Yeah.
But I think the star has got to be Anya Taylor-Joy. I love her and everything that she does. And I think it's a real waste if Disney and the powers that be at the MCU does not choose to run with this, because you're getting the impression from us at this point, we haven't given buckets yet, but that we have all liked this movie. So I think it would be a waste if they buried this, if they did not continue anything. And I think that the references that they do have to the X-Men were not necessary. That I think they could have easily lost that little scene where they talk about, it's obvious we're being groomed for the X-Men. It's obvious who her superior is, because that ties it in. So if they cut that out, this could have been a nice gateway for the MCU to bring in those characters and still keep these characters from the New Mutants. But I don't think, from what I'm reading and from what I'm seeing, it's going to play out that way.
You don't think that they all signed like multi-movie deals?
They probably did before Disney took over.
Right.
But I think that nobody really knows what the future of the X-Men as a whole is going to be now that the Fox the Fox Studios is under the Disney umbrella.
Right.
And obviously, like, they're talking about how they're going to reboot the X-Men or how to incorporate them back
See,
into
I
the rest
think
of the
that
MCU.
to go back and to redo the origin, you have to just establish that they're already existing somewhere.
Right. Now, this was originally meant to be a trilogy, the first movie of a trilogy, and Josh Boone actually had Storm, Colossus, and Professor X in the original draft of the script. They were all taken out. They actually had a post-credit sequence with Antonio Banderas playing Sunspot's father. So that's what was going to loom large in the sequel. They
also filmed scenes with John Hamm as Mr. Sinister, who, if you know Essex, that's Nathaniel Essex. He becomes Mr. Sinister.
But as soon as Boone started hearing these things from Disney that it might not happen, that there's no point in having these scenes in the movie if there's not going to be a sequel.
It's never going to. You're just teasing people for nothing.
Yeah.
I mentioned this before, but I thought the ending was very anticlimactic.
Well, if they were planning for a sequel, it wouldn't be.
Well, no, because here's my thing, which is, the bear is now on the loose, and it is tearing up the group. Danny is knocked unconscious. She's the only one who can stop this thing, because this is her thing to control. She needs to take control of it. And her code name in the comic is Mirage. And she has this psionic bow and arrow that she can shoot. She can actually, like you said before, Jim, she can manifest your fears. And you want to see her fight this thing. And no, she talks it down, pets its nose. And I'm like, this is just like the end of It, where they just belittle the clown.
But she's not afraid of it anymore. That's
I get
how she
it.
beats it.
I know it was anticlimactic for me. It was a lot of buildup. I want to see them work together as a team. And they really didn't. They got their butts kicked individually.
I love the concept, though, of the bear being small when you're born, and then it grows larger because of what power that you give it.
You're feeding it. He said, yeah. That's literally how the movie ends. She said, which one wins? The one you feed. Mm-hmm. Well, you were feeding that fear.
Well, I think it plays back into the overall theme of the movie again, which isn't about like punching and fighting, and it's about like coming to grips with your personal trauma and like how you're going to move about in the world after you've been through something terrible, because there is a sense, especially at the beginning, that some of these characters wouldn't mind not leaving. They want to stay there away from people that they might hurt.
I don't disagree. I just wanted a bigger climax, I guess. Me as a comic book guy. The first time Ileana, and again, like you said, she kills it in this movie. She's Argentinian. She's not Russian. But I do think that they cast pretty close to like the ethnic, no one's playing an Asian when, you're clearly a white person. But she has Lockheed. Now, Jim brought up Lockheed. Lockheed is a dragon that was Kitty Pryde's pet in the X-Men comics. It came back when one of their adventures, I want to say it was Secret Wars, but I think it was when they went off-world to fight the Brood. But anyways, over the years, Lockheed then became Magic's pet. But he's a puppet that she talks to. And it's almost like a cathartic thing for her where she talks to it and it talks back to her. And yet at the end of the movie, he's real. She comes out of limbo, and there he is, fully realized Lockheed Dragon, blowing blue flames. And as a comic book nerd, I'm like, but
so this is one of the things
you don't explain it. How did he become real?
So there's, I just looked at it. Okay, there's got to be a tangible Lockheed in this limbo. Maybe it's an alternate, reality to ours, and the puppet is real in this reality, and she found it. Somehow.
Like Calvin and Hobbes, where only
Perhaps.
It didn't take away, but it didn't make any sense. Where all of a sudden this is a real dragon, and he is doing more damage to this bear than half the other.
But as you said, it didn't really matter to me at that point because I was so happy to see it.
That's that. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. Yeah. But we do get at the end credits, they did commission Bill Sienkiewicz to do new illustrations of the actors as the characters, and you get a sense of his style, and you see, and even the logo that they use, the New Mutants, really kind of echoes his type work that he did within the story for the titles of each episode for Badlands and those three books especially. So it was nice that they brought him back into the fold. I did it. I enjoyed it.
I did as well. But again, just due to circumstances, I think it's $67 million it cost to make all told. It only made $3.1 million the first couple of days of this weekend, which, given the pandemic and everything else, I don't know how much it would have, if it would have made its money back or been a blockbuster in different circumstances.
Or if it came out when it was originally supposed to be released.
I think that history is going to unfairly slight it. And
probably.
I don't think it deserves
especially if you go to IMDb and you start reading these reviews.
Man, you don't need to do that.
No, but there's a lot of people, most people you post on a social media, say, hey, I just came out of this movie. How was it? Why don't you go see the movie and think for yourself?
We walked out of the theater and an employee was standing there. And this is the first time this has ever happened to me. How'd you like it? And he was really interested in
but
what
I think we
say.
probably would have still been there talking to him about it. And it was a stupid missed opportunity for me not just to hand him one of our cards and say, why don't you tune in on Wednesday to find out? But yeah, clearly I think he enjoyed it and he was looking forward to someone else who liked it as well.
We should have gave him our buckets right there.
I know. This house, did you read that this center, this abandoned psychiatric center was haunted?
No, but I do know it was the same place that they used for Shutter Island.
Yeah, I did read that. Somewhere, it's outside of Boston. But yes, I guess there's an interview on IMDb with the kids and they were all talking about some of the weird experiences that they had and that it smelled pretty bad.
So how many buckets would we offer New Mutants?
I'm going 3.5.
Yeah, I think 3.5 is fair too. Like I said, this was way better than it had any right to be. I thought it held together fairly well, all things considered. And as a person who did not spend their childhood reading the New Mutants, I did not feel any loss. I felt like I understood roughly what everyone was going through in the movie. I didn't need extra information, although, like I said, my husband was happy to give us lots of extra information.
We should have invited him on.
I hope he waited until after the movie was over.
He did.
I hate that. Oh, you know what that is? It's like, shut up, just watch it.
Ilyan is one of his favorite characters also because his favorite character is Colossus. So he just, any even remote connection to Colossus makes him very, very excited.
That's his little snowflake. Was he happy with Colossus's portrayal in the Deadpool movies?
I think he was happy just to see him have a role because the X-Men, especially the second movie, right, sort of flirts with Colossus for a second, but then really, like you don't really see.
That's a hard character. Well, you go back 20 years, it probably was not even feasible to really have him.
Right. But that's a whole other discussion. Like when Ratner came into that with the third, it's just blew whatever positive momentum that X2 generated.
Yeah, X2 was that's still up there. Jim?
3.5. Yeah, I'm going to match.
All right, 3.5 across the board.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought
it's
it
solid
was
entertainment.
Yeah.
You heard our experience in the theater, so I mean, we can't say more than that. It's up to you. I can't tell someone to go to the theater because if you're uncomfortable, then don't.
Well, my son would very much wanted me to tell you his buckets.
Okay.
He's given me a small Post-it note with his ratings for every movie we've seen this week.
Nice.
He said 4.9.
Whoa.
4.9.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, has Dad turned him on?
It.
Has Dad turned him on to the comics?
He has not read the comics.
Nice.
Yeah. He just really, really liked this.
0.9 is like 1 inch below the rim of the bucket.
Right?
Yeah.
That's like one popped kernel below. But these characters also are his age.
Yeah. I think he connected to that a lot more than, his 40-something-year-old parents did.
Correct. Right. Yeah, I mean, if I had no connection to the comic source, I probably would have looked at it slightly differently.
That's even more. That makes me think even more what a shame it is if they end it with this movie. In my estimation, they could easily parlay this into something.
Yeah, I think they're moving on.
All right, well, let's move on as well.
Okay.
I'm very hungry. Do you think Sunspot could barbecue us some burgers or something?
There may be some Cheetos waiting for us on the other side.
So let's go to the concession stand, and we will be right back.
All right.
Here's a choice of food and drink to satisfy anyone and everyone. You'll find something to please you to add to your evening's enjoyment. Something to please all tastes and age groups.
Time now for your barbecue break. Treat yourself right now to that good old Southern style just right barbecue. Steeped in taste-tingling barbecue sauce, made just right from fresh, firm, choice ingredients. The recipe handed down for generations and cooked Southern style to tender perfection. Slowly, hour after hour, capturing the taste-tempting barbecue flavor. It's just right, tender goodness, generously spooned on a fresh, soft bun for you. It's hard to wait. It smells so good. And oh boy, it is lip-smacking good. A snack to remember. Enjoy it now along with your choice of hot or cold drinks. Prepared and served just right. Just try the best barbecue in the land that made barbecue famous. It's Southern style, just right barbecue.
All right, dudes. We had a second new movie.
Holy, 2 new movies in 1 week. This is
Yeah.
when was the last new movie? Oh well, I guess technically.
In
Yeah.
theater, the last one was Onward.
That was you guys saw it in theaters. I was in Australia.
Yes,
I
that's right.
You missed
That's
out on
right.
the
the last movie, I was going to ask you what the last movie you saw in the theater was.
And
was
that was
Onward.
at the start of COVID, so I was
That
a
was
little
March.
apprehensive even in Onward.
Was that first or second week? March 9th, I think maybe. It
Yeah.
dropped.
Actually, this was a 4-movie week for me because I had to go back and watch the first 2 Bill and Ted's
Yeah.
to just
Yeah,
to
I did not
familiarize.
get.
Play directly into each other, all 3 of these. So if you hadn't seen the first 2 for over 20 years, you're struggling to remember what
The
happened.
second, I will say the second one, outside of death and the fact that they had the scenes at the Rock where Star Trek was filmed, I don't remember much of it.
I loved the
station.
second one on this viewing. I loved
you?
it. The audacity for them to take death from the 7th seal to do like a Bergman tribute.
It's so funny that you
In
say
a-
it because I had seen the first one a few times since the 80s, but the second one I have not rewatched since I saw
Right.
it in the theater. And we rewatched it this week because I was like, oh, Death is going to be in Face the Music, so I needed to make sure that my son knew who he was, and
He
I
does not know who
actually
death is.
liked Bogus Journey way more than I remembered liking it. It was
Wow.
much better than I remembered. And
Jim
And I
just said
thought
the
it was
same
much
thing.
better than the first one because I watched them back to back.
Wow, that
When I
first
saw
one's
the
iconic.
first one, I was probably 18 when I saw the first one, and I was a little bit beyond, I think, the age range that was the sweet spot for Bill
I was
and
way
Ted.
over.
So when I was watching it in the theater, I remember, okay, this is funny, but I don't have a desire to watch it ever again. So,
Wow,
and I don't
that
think
is-
I ever saw Bogus Journey in the theater, and so watching it now, I just had this stupid smile on my face throughout the entire thing.
And same thing, like you were saying, I had not seen Seventh Seal in 1991, but obviously I've seen it since then, and I was laughing my ass off at the scenes of them playing board games and Twister.
With death, yeah.
With
Twister with
death.
death, yeah.
And
I do
he's like,
remember that.
3 out of 4. No, 5 out of
Right,
7.
come on. Yeah.
So I had such a positive feeling actually going from Bogus Journey into Face the Music because I enjoyed watching Bogus Journey so much more as an adult than I did as a teenager.
In the first Excellent Adventure, it's them trying to pass their history class. Or
Right.
they're going to flunk, and if they flunk, they will never become the forebearers of a future society. So George Carlin's character Rufus comes back
Rufus.
from the next century to tell them that their society in the future is based on Bill and Ted, and they need
their
to
music,
become a success as the Wild Stallions. And if they don't pass their history class,
It'll
they will
happen.
never become the Wild Stallions. So apparently, they're doing fine in English, math, and every other subject. It's
Right,
just,
it's just
history.
It's just history.
They're going to
Excellent.
fail. So they go through this crazy
yes.
adventure. They bring back all these historical characters. Napoleon, which interestingly enough, they were going with Hitler in the original.
Oh
script.
man, would
And
have
they
been
very
too
wisely
soon.
rethought that. They very wisely rethought that. Genghis Khan, Abraham Lincoln. So all these historical figures who we assume that the teacher and the rest of the kids at the very end think that they're actors. but
The actors, right?
Historical.
Joan of
figures.
Arc.
Joan of Arc, played by Jane Wiedlin from the Go-Go's.
From the
Yes,
Go-Go's.
yeah.
No dialogue, just wide blinking eyes throughout the entire thing. And then with Bogus Journey, they just ratcheted it up, bringing in death, as Christina was saying, with the whole Seventh Seal connection. It's way smarter than it appears to be on the
Yeah.
surface. You can watch this and not know about the Seventh Seal and not know what they're doing and enjoy it just like you did Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. But it's got that added depth to it as well. Loved it. And so going into Face the Music, I think it's a worthy successor. And it's got like a sweetness to it as well at the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah,
And it gives
very
you like
much so.
like a feel-good feeling at
It's
the
funny
end.
because it brought me back to when we talked about Space Force, and Christina talked about that gooey centerness.
Mhm.
Because it's been what, 33 years
Yeah.
Yeah.
since the Bogus Journey.
And even with Bogus Journey, there are a couple of wince-inducing things in the first Bill and Ted, and then in Bogus Journey, there's like a couple of throwaway homophobic references. There's nothing like that in the third one.
Yep.
Sometimes things that
Are just,
if you looked at it in the 80s, you might have a very different view on it looking at it now.
yeah, there's certain things that were just kind of accepted, and now we look at them. But when they announced that they were making this, like at first you're like, really? Oh, that's kind of cool. And then you're like, why? Like once again, it's like we're just going back to the well, because Keanu Reeves has just gone on to be anything but Bill S. Preston.
Well, he's Ted.
I'm sorry, Ted. Ted. Sorry.
I think
Christmas.
even Keanu and Alex Winter confuse their characters. I read somewhere where sometimes they forget who they're playing.
Well, then you bring in the daughters, and they're named Billy and Theo.
Talk about knowing what's happening early on, and almost immediately that it's the girls that they're actually.
Yes, no, it's not shocking, but they didn't just reboot the thing and just make them. Bill and Ted are, lost in time, and it's the girls who have to go and find and save them, and it becomes, the female Ghostbusters. It's just retelling the same story. And the daughter storyline does echo what the first movie, Excellent Adventure did, but you have the secondary story of Bill and Ted trying to find, they're confronted with the fact that they are now middle-aged. They have not written the story. They have not united the universe, and they are failures. And at every turn, Ted's dad is telling them, I told you, you're losers. Why are you women married to them? And you need to get real jobs.
It's interesting because there's always been, on the surface, they're just dumb movies, right? About like dumb characters. But there's always been like a little bit more going on than it appears to be, like especially in the first movie where you really get the sense that Ted has become a really kind of sweet person as a defense against his bully father, and the thing that I found so interesting about this movie is when you're a teenager, as they are in the first film, you're faced with all these possibilities of your life, and your possibilities are limitless. And now as middle-aged fathers, they go into these various futures, and their possibilities are not limitless anymore, right? There's only a few possible paths for them. But the interesting thing is sort of watching them confront the sort of shrinking nature of their lives with grace, which they do.
More so with Ted. Ted, I think, realizes it much more so than Bill.
And I really think that's interesting how they it wasn't just like a nostalgia trip. They're like,
right.
The great thing about Bill and Ted, I think that's always been present, is that they do have this kind of inherent goodness, like kindness, that is not present in a lot of other characters.
Right. They are unjaded completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it.
It's nice to see characters, I think, that are kind in movies, like characters who don't confront every situation, with aggression or meanness. And I was really impressed at how quickly they sort of fall back into the physicality of those characters. Like when Keanu Reeves is Ted, like he's got this certain way of walking, and the way he moves. Like when he doesn't turn his head, he turns his whole body. And
right. And he does a lot of hair acting as well.
Yeah.
Right. And I will give shout out to the girl who played the actress who played Billy.
Bridget
Lundy Payne, who completely channels 1989 Ted. She's not.
They, yes. Non-binary. Yes.
You are correct. They do acknowledge as identify as non-binary. So
and we get Ready or Not's Samara Weaving in there as well.
Yeah.
Even though she is almost 30 years old at this point, she does look very young in this movie.
There was a Comic-Con interview with all of them, and she talked about the funniness of working with Keanu Reeves. Her uncle's Hugo Weaving.
Oh, geez.
So, and
I think I do remember just talking about that.
Mr. Anderson.
right.
That
It's
is
funny.
hysterical.
She
Wow.
talked about how it's so funny that she worked with the guy.
Did she call him Mr. Anderson all the time?
Only unsaid.
It's also interesting about Keanu Reeves specifically before we go into the movie. I think it's so crazy that here's a guy who's had, a 30+ year acting career where people keep telling him he's not actually a good actor.
Right.
But somehow in every decade, he's created some completely iconic character that becomes so closely associated with him. Like in the 80s, he was Ted. And then in the 90s, he was Neo.
Oh,
and
no, he was Jonathan Harker in the 90s. Come on.
and now he's John Wick, and it's amazing because when I was watching the interview, everyone just kept referring to him as John Wick,
Right.
I think it's so crazy that he's not really credited with being a good actor because obviously
You're
he's
right.
good at something.
Yeah.
Because
No,
you know
you're
what?
right.
What I
Yeah.
was thinking the whole time I was watching Bogus Journey, I was thinking the same year he did My Own Private Idaho.
Ooh.
Yeah.
The same year.
And he's so good in that.
Death,
Right.
same guy that played
Same
him
guy,
in
yep.
Bogus Journey.
I love William Sadler.
Oh my! He kills it. And you just again, I need to go back and watch both.
Now, I was reading that he played the character in Tales from the Crypt in the HBO show in the mid-90s as well for one episode.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in this one, Rufus's daughter comes back from the future.
Who's
and
played by Kristen Shaw? That's Trixie from Toy Story and Mabel from
Gravity Falls.
Gravity
right.
Falls. Yep.
And also from 30 Rock as well, if you're familiar
Also,
with that show.
super quick shout out that she is named Kelly because it's the same name as George Carlin's real daughter, Kelly Carlin.
Who has a cameo, right?
She does have a cameo in the future scenes. Yep.
Right. So she comes back to tell Bill and Ted that they still haven't written the song that will unite the universe. And because of this, time is folding in upon itself. And then you see snatches of historical figures like coming out of their timelines and going into other people's timelines and appearing at various points in time. So if they don't write the song to unite the universe within, I think she gives them 77 minutes.
77 minutes at precisely 7:17.
That time will fold in upon itself, and then there's going to be nothing after that. So then they're under a lot of pressure at this point because throughout their entire lives, they've been trying to write the song to unite the universe.
Now all of a sudden they have like 77 hours. And you know what's brilliant about that is I bitched about the fact that this movie is only an hour and 28 minutes. That's 88 minutes. They get the news about 10 minutes into this movie. Right. So it's almost real time.
Yeah.
It's almost real time. And I'm like, all right, okay.
So, of course, their first thought is, let's go in the future and get the song from ourselves.
Steal it from ourselves. Yeah. Which it makes sense.
Whenever they run into their future versions of themselves were my favorite parts of the movie.
I have to say, I'm going to say this right now, which is this had to have been the most fun making a movie because you do see 4 or 5 different iterations of these characters and each one is vastly different and they interact with each other. And I'm like, how much fun would this have been? No wonder why they came back.
Mm-hmm.
Because and in every case, it's the future version of Ted that's the bigger jerk.
But part of that comes from the fact that you see that the wives are now kind of questioning, all right, for 25 years, you've been telling us that you're going to unite the universe, and yet you have yet to do it. We're supporting you. You dragged us out of medieval times. You know what? Maybe it's not working. And there's that scene where they're in couple counseling. Right. And I couldn't help but think if you've ever seen the Jonah Hill, Channing Tatum, 21 Jump Street, they have the same thing. They go into therapy. To the point where the girl who plays the therapist is in that movie. She's like a drug dealer, but they can't separate themselves. Like even Ted trying to say to his wife, "I love you." He keeps saying, "We love you," and she's like, "No, you try it again." Mm-hmm. You know? So they're inseparable, and so the wives are like, maybe this is not working. So part of that is that they need to go and salvage their marriage as well as save the universe.
But the wives still, they're still tied to them because they know what's at stake. They know that they're on the level, that they have, in fact, time traveled because they're from the past as well.
Correct. Right. And, every time it's brought up, Ted's dad's like, you didn't time travel. You didn't meet these people. None of this happened.
They go through the various iterations of visiting future Bill and Ted's. There's one hilarious scene where the future Bill and Ted has broken into Dave Grohl's house.
Dave Grohl's, that was my favorite, by the way.
And try to give them a song. Favorite. You assume it's a Foo Fighters song. They try to give them a Dave Grohl song to bring back into so they can.
That was in 2025. Yeah.
And then they go to the prison versions of themselves, which was hilarious. That give the beat down to the robot that's followed them. That's another great character. Is that robot?
He was phenomenal. But so they go into Kelly, Rufus's daughter, takes them to the future generation where Holland Taylor is the leader, and she's been in every movie from here in the last 50 years. And after they leave, she's like, oh, they stole the time machine. They stole Rufus's, the phone booth, the old school phone booth. And it's like, we just need to kill him. It's like, well, they were just standing in front of you. Why didn't that just take him out right then and there? And now we got to create a killer robot that chases him around. But the killer robot is so great. He is such a great character. And all I kept thinking of is Marvin from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Mm-hmm. That he's just got this kind of morose, sorry, I'm going to have to kill you,
And what was his name? Dennis Caleb McCoy.
Dennis Caleb McCoy. And he's played by, did I write down his? No, but he's Victor Zsasz in Gotham.
And I love the part where he asked to break the news to Bill and Ted that he's killed his daughters.
Right. Mistakes were made.
Mistakes were made.
Your daughters. And apparently everyone who dies just automatically goes to hell.
Yeah, nobody's got a chance.
Apparently not. But the side plot is that the daughters see them step into the time egg and disappear, and realize that their fathers were telling the truth all along, and that they need to do something. So they steal the egg, and they basically go.
And they try to assemble the greatest band in history, which is a nice throwback to the first movie.
Yes,
them
correct.
Trying to
because,
assemble
like I
all
said,
the
you could have easily just got rid of Bill and Ted altogether and rebooted this with a female version doing the exact same thing, which is what their storyline is. But it's a much bigger thing going on, because you still have Bill and Ted trying to figure out, how are we going to write this song? And as opposed, because again, they've been banging their heads, and you see the montage at the beginning of the movie, which is brilliant, because it just catches you up that, they were this monster rock band, and you see Death playing bass and all this other stuff. So you set it up that they were on their way, and then it was just like this slow decline, and it opens with them playing at Missy's wedding, with once again revealing that here's the song that's going to unite us, and it was just horrible. I don't know.
And they're playing. I think a theremin was one of the instruments, and they're trying to dance to it.
But the girls have become like music acumens. They are just well versed in everything that probably Bill and Ted don't even know about music.
It's almost like you're being hit over the head with it when Bill and Ted finally visit the aged versions of themselves, and they give them the little file with their last names, as the songwriters.
Preston and Logan, yeah. So they go back. Who we get? Jimi Hendrix. We get Louis Armstrong, and then we just keep going back in time. So we did pick up Mozart, and then we just go back to like the Ming Dynasty. We're picking up, I don't know,
the first drummer in the history of the world, right?
Right, correct. Who doesn't speak English or whatever, but and then Kid Cudi shows up,
playing
up.
Station.
But it's fun because the girls' characters have that kind of inherent sweetness that their fathers have, and their whole motivation is to support their dads.
Right.
They're like, our dads just need this one great band.
They're the only ones that believe in them.
Yes, correct. Yeah. Well, that's because they saw the wives know. The wives came from the past, so they know that what they're saying is true. But they're, at that point, you have future versions of the wives who come and take them to multiple times to see, all right, is there any timeline where we're happy together? And it's like
surprisingly emotional.
Yeah, and when you get to that end, and again, you can't watch Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and not get caught up in their final presentation when everybody comes out and it just works.
Right.
As silly as it is, it works, and you're cheering for these characters, and that's exactly what happens here at the end, where they realize it's not us. And again, the girls did unite the band, and they did kind of write the song, but it really wasn't about, it was about everyone playing together.
Yeah. It was,
that's what it comes down to. And to me, that seems very of now.
Obviously purposeful, for this. It's a very positive ending. So it's not about the song, it's about who plays it. It's about everybody playing it together.
And so while the girls are trying to get this band to play, because now like chaos, you got the pyramids are showing on the horizon in San Dimas, Saturn shows up, and the whole world is just, they're seconds away from just going to hell. Traffic is all backed up, so they just set up they magically find a truck that has music equipment in it. But then Bill and Ted realize, they take the telephone booth and they go to infinite mode, and they just send instruments
to everybody
through
in
every
existence.
timeline, so that everyone is playing instruments all at the same time.
It's nice because they come to that conclusion, and so they are an important part of the resolution, even if they don't.
Right,
even
that's like
if they
saying that
don't
Luke's,
write the song.
Yeah, that's like saying that Anakin is the chosen one. Well, no, your son was.
And Death gets to play bass again.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great, where they're in hell and they have to go and basically grovel. And the girls are like, you know what? Why don't you two go outside and we'll talk to him? And they talk to like his ego, but he kills it. He steals this movie again. He just, it was such a great movie.
He's so great.
Good. Sad to see that Dennis did not get to play the tambourine.
He was a dancer, right? He told him to go practice his dance move.
Go practice over there. Yeah.
I hope that you guys watched all the way to the end.
Of course we did.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Yes, because there's an end credit. But before you even get to the end credit, when you get to the title credits at the end, I thought that was brilliant. It's just a montage of everyday people playing instruments, dancing.
Yeah.
It's if you're on TikTok, this is what you probably see all day long, and that's what the message is, which is just everybody come together, play, be happy. And I really liked that. I really thought that was great. But yes, the end scene. And then there's an interview with Paraso, and he said they filmed multiple end credits and they were all improvised, but this was the one that they went with, which is cutting back to Bill and Ted, the aged Bill and Ted in like 2067 or whatever, bedridden, rocking out one more time.
And you did catch Weird Al, didn't you?
Yeah,
what?
I saw Weird Al.
You didn't see him?
I missed him.
Yeah.
When they were showing all the people playing the instruments.
The montage.
Oh my gosh. No, I didn't. I probably, no.
It's funny, because I was like, Weird Al. And my husband was like, I didn't see Weird Al. It's like, back it up.
He's playing his accordion.
No, I completely, you know what? I probably walked out of the room for 2 seconds. Who knows? Damn it. They did say they filmed that last scene without a song. Just like in the movie where they're like, we don't have a song. They did not have a song. So they actually played Obladi Oblada.
Really?
Yeah. He said it's 131 beats a minute. He said, and we just Frankensteined it from the back end. We had to like reverse engineer. Yep. So I thought that was really cool.
And reading into this, I had no memory that there was an animated series, Bill and Ted.
Not only that, there was Evan Dorkin illustrated a comic series for a while, and I think they brought him back to do the comic adaptation of this, and maybe even a new series.
Okay. But reading that the animated series on CBS, voiced by Keanu and Alex Winter.
Yes, they were. Yep.
It's so incredible. Seriously, when you think about Keanu Reeves now, one of like the biggest stars in the world, and I have to believe that, because I know that this film was, they were trying to make this film for almost 10 years. There was a script like as early as 2010, and Dean Paraso had actually been recruited to direct it like way back, like 2012, 2013. So like this has been in the works for a long time, but I have to believe it only became possible because Keanu Reeves has become so bankable again with John Wick.
Right,
yeah.
Wick. Yeah.
I'm very glad that they did. If we're ready for buckets, I think I would go the same, 3.5. I enjoyed it.
I'm going higher.
Going higher?
Yeah, 4.25.
4.25. Wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 4. I really enjoyed this, and I had such like a warm, positive feeling. I teared up a little bit at the end. I really liked this.
That's probably why I missed Weird Al, because I walked out of the room because I was tearing up and I didn't want to do it in front of my wife, who's like, this is horrible. But I'm crying over it.
My son, again, would like me to share his buckets. He has like many buckets to give this week. He's actually defying the the upper limit.
He's going 6.
He's making up for the dearth of buckets for Hercules last week.
Yeah. He said 5.5 buckets for Face the Music. And
That's not legal. That's not legal.
Really like this.
You lost your bucket license.
He's like overflowing his popcorn bucket.
Wow. That's like going back for a refill. Unfortunately, that is off the table right now. You cannot get refills.
So I don't remember did we have a confession?
It was your
Confessionals.
No, I said the thing about being a procrastinator.
Repeat the question.
It was inspired by this other podcast that I really enjoy called No Stupid
right.
Questions.
Yes.
And the question is, actually, it's sort of a multi-part question. Okay, so are you a procrastinator? Why do you think you're a procrastinator? And like, what kind of effect do you think that has if you are or not? I guess I'll go first. But I think it's an interesting question because I think it really kind of gets to the heart of like who you are as a person in some ways. So like a procrastinator, like in the psychological sense, privileges their current self over their future self. Right? So you're basically saying like in this moment, I would rather do X than Y, which is some responsibility that I have. And
so you're sacrificing the freedom of your future self.
Right.
So you have no regard for your future self.
Right. So I will say that I'm 100% not a procrastinator. I always am privileging my future self over my current self. I'm always like, I really hate it when I have a deadline and then, I'm getting stressed out because the deadline's approaching and I haven't done enough work. So I'm always trying to like do a little bit at a time because I know that in the future I'll feel better if this thing is done and I can just sort of coast to the end and I don't have to worry about the date something is due. I'm actually such a non-procrastinator that I've actually handed in my last 4 books early. As opposed
that's an overachiever. That's not being.
But even like in my daily life, like I'll get up and I'll be like, I exercise first thing in the morning because I know if I don't, later in the day, I'm going to regret it. I'm going to be like, oh, I should have done X, Y, or Z.
And Z, yeah.
And I hate that feeling. So I'm privileging my future self by saying in the afternoon, if I got up and I've done my exercise and then I write and then I do whatever chores and errands that I have, and then at noon, I'm done, and now I have the whole afternoon to look forward to, and I can read a book or do whatever.
I was going to say, as long as your future self gets the benefit from it.
Yeah.
Because you could just constantly fall into that hole of, I want to be one step ahead, and then you never actually take the time to appreciate that one step.
But I do this in so many ways. Like, the other day I was making a salad for lunch and I was like, you know what? I could make a couple extra as long as I'm here and I got everything out, and I put a couple salads in jars and then I had salads for 2 more days and I didn't have to worry about what I was going to make for lunch. So I try to do little things like that where I'm always trying to I always feel like I'm trying to help some future version of myself.
Wow. You are like a Bill and Ted. Just go ahead and I'll steal your salads from the future and then I'll have to make it myself.
So Jeff's going to come to my house and take all the food that I've made for my future self.
Screw you, future self. Yes, indeed. Since what is this? This came off the show, No Stupid Questions?
Yes.
Okay. So in that vein, can I give you my answer next week? I will say wholeheartedly that I am a procrastinator. My wife will attest to that. More so, not necessarily my work currently, but when I was an illustrator and when I was working for myself and I had projects, if you gave me 6 months, I would take all 6 months. If you tell me it's due tomorrow, it's done tomorrow. Yeah, I guess I do tend to put off stuff, but I have 2 weeks off right now and I have a giant laundry list of things to get done and I'll get them done. It may take me the last day to get them done, but I think I'm better than I was. I think Your character has an arc. Are you improving?
I'd
like to think so. I think we all want to think that we improve.
I think
as the older you get, the kind of, you get a little more philosophical and you kind of step back and you look at yourself and you're like, would I have liked myself when I was 20? Because I may have been a jerk.
I think though, the question is when you procrastinate, does it create anxiety for your future self?
No.
I mean, that's the question.
I don't think so. No, because I work better under pressure. I
So
know
you're
that
not,
for
like,
I know
feeling
that for a
anxious about
fact. But I will tell you this: my child's procrastination gives me huge anxiety, and I can't fault them.
I know.
I
what you
can't
mean
fault
there.
them though, because I know where they get it from, and all I can do is instill in you. All right, if you have just, I'm a master list because I like to check things off on a list. At the when at the end of my day, and not so much now, but at the end of my day, if I had X, Y, and Z to do exactly what you said, I would put it on the list, and it's off my brain. It's on my desk. It's waiting for me the next day. I don't think about it when I step back in and I look and I said, oh, I did do this, and I love doing stuff just so I can cross it off. I feel like I accomplished. Now my child is a master procrastinator, and it drives me nuts. But again, it's like, as long as you can thrive in that back end pressure, then I can't fault you. And I know quite well where you're getting it from, and I apologize. Yeah, I guess that there you go. I'm a procrastinator.
I think something you just said there, Jeff, is opened the door for our next or a future confessional. How would you confront your 20-year-old self? Because now I'm preoccupied thinking about how I would confront my 20-year-old self.
Well, I will tell you right now, which I tell my kids.
Well, no, don't say this.
Okay,
Save this. We got This is too good of a topic to just throw away right here. So in the future, we will discuss that. I would think that my instinct is to turn towards procrastination. But then my anxiety takes over, and I can't. Because if you...
So you don't want to give into it.
If you give me something, that's basically what my job is. Everything has got a deadline. And usually it's not like a month or 2 months, or it's like in a week or in 4 days or in 5 days. And my first thought is, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But then my anxiety takes over, and I do it like that second. I start working on it until it's a flurry of activity and it's done. The anxiety overrules the procrastination every single time. Sometimes, maybe to the detriment of the work. I'd like to think not, but I need to get things done as quickly as possible. It didn't play out this way yesterday because, Jeff, you got there a lot earlier than me, but I need to leave on time. It's almost like a military precision that I'm like getting everybody out the door. It's going to take us 35 minutes to get there. We need to leave now. Now.
In that regard, I am not a procrastinator. I am the guy that's at the airport 3 hours ahead of schedule, and it drives my family nuts because I don't want that level of stress. I don't need to be constantly looking at the clock, worrying about getting stuck in traffic. I want to be there. If I'm there and my luggage is there, and now if I got to sit at the bar or sit at the freaking breakfast nook for an hour, 2 hours, then so be it.
Agreed. I know people who have missed flights, and I'm always like, how can you miss a flight? Like, that doesn't even, that does not compute. You know?
How can you come late to a movie?
Yeah.
What do you want to do today?
And act like it's the first time you've ever been to a movie theater. When you stumble in.
Whoa, there's a big screen with a picture on it.
Whoa.
You guys went to an AMC that had reserved seating, right? Which is how...
Yes.
So every theater in Chicago basically now does reserved seating online. So we've been doing this for a long time. And I have noticed that when you have reserved seating, people come later because they're not worried about getting their seat.
Yep, or finding a spot. It's like, I already have a seat reserved. I'll show up whenever. Yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. But again, once those trailers start going, just sit down.
I know. I feel like it's disruptive to other people. And as a person who loves trailers, that I really hate it when someone's like walking in front of me when the trailers are on.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of Nuvi, when it came on, they showed some guy who was asking questions of people on the street. These questions were so easy, and these were the dumbest people alive answering the questions. Okay, so one of the questions was, who are like the four most important Chris's in Hollywood right now? Okay, so you guys can do this, right? Yeah.
Chris Pine, right? Chris Hemsworth.
Evans and Pratt,
Chris Evans
right?
And Pratt.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, so like this is easy to do, right? The woman
apparently not, because I
the first woman he asked this question of, she was like Robert Downey Jr.
Nice.
And I was like, do you know what like a first name?
They have to. I'm sure they have to sign like some kind of a waiver that they can screen this. Yeah, I'll show my stupidity.
Then there was like screen. Christmas, Christianity,
Chris Columbus. Oh, yeah. That's old school Jay Leno right there. That was always cringeworthy television when you go out in the street
So
and
dumb.
ask people questions. You know, I have a family member who didn't know, couldn't name me the 4 Beatles. It just blew my mind. No.
Really?
And he's like, it's just not my wheelhouse. I don't care.
Are either of you guys familiar with Carl Hyacin, Florida
Yes.
author?
No.
He's got this book called Skin Tight, which is one of my favorite books of all time. It's very, very funny, very cynical. And one of the main characters asks potential dates if they can name the 4 Beatles. And if they can't, then he will not date them. And in the book, there's a very funny scene where he asks a woman who's much younger than him if she can name the 4 Beatles, and she can't. She gets 3 of them right. She like whiffs on the 4th one. So.
You know what? I get it. My wife is not a big pop culture. Like, she could look at a movie and be like, "That's that guy that's in that movie," and she knows him, but she doesn't know his name. She doesn't know what the movie was that he was in. But I still love her. I'm not gonna throw her out because she can't tell me who George Harrison is.
So my wife, we often will wager each other. Like, I'll be convinced that she's wrong about this certain actor.
I've
like,
gone down that
this is
road.
whatever. He was in this movie. I'm like, no. Well, look it up on the phone right now. So that's pretty much our conversation every movie that we watch.
How often is Aaron right? Because I'm betting.
I would say
right
it's
lot.
a straight
Yeah.
50-50.
You think so?
I think so. Yes. Maybe I'm giving myself too much credit there.
Don't we all?
She's probably screaming at the phone right now as she's listening to this episode.
I don't even hear these conversations, and I'm 100% giving Aaron more credit than you.
Funny. You know, I realized yesterday, we posted on Instagram before we went into the theater, the 3 of us, and I'm like, I wonder how many people think that that's Christina. So there you go. That was an episode.
Yeah.
2 new movies. Woo!
And we're not stopping. We're not stopping here.
What's going on next week?
Well, Jeff, maybe you should announce it since it's your pick for co-feature.
Oh my gosh. So we are finally watching Mulan. Is that correct?
Which means we'll finally stop talking about Mulan.
No.
But again, with surprising turn of events, we ended up seeing New Mutants before Mulan.
Mulan, which drops on Disney Plus September 4th. We will be plunking down our $30. So Disney got us there.
Yeah, $90 total. You're welcome, Disney.
Yeah. But we are going to pair this up with Nausicaa, which is Valley of the Wind. Is that the subtitle? Nausicaa, Valley of the Wind? I didn't even come prepared, Jim.
Hayao Miyazaki.
Hayao Miyazaki, yes. You would think that my coffee would kick in by now. This was a movie, one of the first movies that I shared with my child, and they will not let me watch this without them. So I'm very excited.
In your personal collection, I assume.
I do own this on DVD. Yes.
I own this one too.
Yes, and it's already waiting for me at my library for pickup. So
You have to pick it up at the curb.
they have actually what looks like a row of high school lockers outside, and they give you a combination.
So it's
to
like
get
an
into the
Amazon
locker.
locker thing.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, we do have curbside pickup, but it's only for 2 hours on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So usually I have to send one of my children.
Yeah, and mine is by appointment, so I had to make a certain time, and then they make sure that the stuff is in there before that time. And it's a 15-minute window that I have to get there.
Damn. If you get stuck in traffic, what if you procrastinate?
Well, I think they're assuming that if you're a Highland resident, there is no traffic to be stuck in.
So if you're 16 minutes, they run out there and take it out of the locker?
I don't know what the
Right.
I've never
Does
tested
the
that.
combination explode?
I
What's
have
going
played
on
by
there?
the rules. I have always been there at my allotted time, so I have not tested what
Okay.
they would actually do if I didn't make it.
I would like to think probably most people who rent from the library play by the rules.
Yes,
Just
I
like people
think
who go to the movie theater.
I would
Play
think
by the
so.
rules, kids.
Yeah.
That's all we're asking. It's not that hard.
Yeah, wear your mask, please. Continue to wear your mask, and it'll make
Yes, because I don't need to be getting into some fisticuffs, because you know that it's only a matter of time before someone confronts.
Let's not.
I don't want to deal with that. Oh, I'm not. I'm not that type of person. I'll just mumble under my breath. Look at this jerk. All right, kids. Well, thank you very much for listening,
Yes.
as always.
Thank you.
back
And we
next
will
week.
continue to bring you new movies, hopefully. So, all right, bye.
it. Bye.
Bye.
Hello, everybody. If you liked the podcast you just heard, then please follow TMI on all of our social media outlets. First and foremost, email us at tmipodcast2018@gmail.com. That is tmipodcast2018@gmail.com.
And you can follow us on Twitter at TMI_podcast 2018. Stop over, say hi, give us a compliment. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Make sure you follow us on Instagram as well, which is also TMI_podcast 2018.
And of course, we are on Facebook, facebook.com/TMI Podcast 2018. And it should be noted, we also have a community page, so join the forum.
And if you like to watch YouTube, you can see us at TMI Podcast 2018, all one word. Look for the popcorn bucket.
Popcorn bucket. Or you could just go to our website, which has every link there, TMIConfessionalspodcast.com. And we'll see you at the concession stand.
We'll save some popcorn for you.
Whoa.